this time we're going to talk about going big in Vancouver. And so how can we do that without people like Josh from Eastside Games, Oliver Birch from Hothead Games, Caroline from Forward Human Capital Solutions, and Michael Chang. Guys, come on up. Oh, yeah, go for it. My scenery is now going. Hey, how you doing?
How you doing?
All right, good. Yeah, that's it, man. Hey, man, how's it? Come on up.
Thanks.
Hey, Josh, how you doing?
Creative BC didn't want to sponsor me. They're taking off. They know what's going down.
Yeah.
We'll have a hug later.
So let's kick off in the usual fashion. Karen, do you want to just sort of introduce yourself so the audience know who you are and what you do?
Hi, my name is... Can you hear me?
Do we have that mic on?
There we go.
Hello?
Oh, no.
Working? Hello?
That's better.
Hi, my name is Caroline Stokes. I'm the founder of Forward Human Capital Solutions. We work with innovation leaders, specifically for executive coaching and executive recruiting. We're based in Vancouver, but we work with companies internationally.
Hi, my name is Michael Chang. I work at NCSoft, which is a large public Korean game company. I focus on investments and acquisitions. I have one investment here in Vancouver in Yaletown, and before this I did free-to-play mobile and PC acquisitions for Electronic Arts.
Hi, I'm Oliver Birch. I'm the head up the marketing team at Hothead Games. We're a studio locally of 170 people. We have 250 million downloads, mainly in sports and shooting genre. And I'm pretty proud to be part of this community. I'm not made in Vancouver, as you can probably tell. But yeah, proud to have been part of this community for the last 5 years.
250 downloads. I should have sat there, so I don't have to go back. I don't have 250 downloads. I'm Josh from Eastside Games. We're a scrappy, independent studio, bootstrapped and profitable in East Van. We have 25 million downloads for our mobile games, and right now our big games on mobile is Pot Farm. So if you need digital weed, come see me.
But it's kind of a real kind of scope of different kind of game genres and styles that you guys kind of represent. You know, kind of the more kind of traditional genres and the more kind of jokey kind of, well, jokey's not quite the right word. Is Pot Farm jokes? I don't know. Depends on where you are, I guess. But you're talking about different scales of companies, different types of audiences. Why here? Why be in Vancouver? You know, why British Columbia? Who wants to describe? I mean, is it just a mistake of birth by the fact that you're here? You know, or is there something about this culture in this location?
I'll start. I think there's a lot of ambition here, which is similar to, say, places like the Bay Area, perhaps. But it's still very relaxed as well. So it's not so, concerned about the valley and that sort of VC and everything else. So a lot of people want to do good things here and make great games. I think that's probably one of the key drivers.
Just start with talent. Everything for us starts with the talent and the quality of development teams, what they can achieve, what they creatively are thinking of. Without that, you really have nothing.
So do you think that talent exists because of the heritage of how long games have been an important part of this?
It does. You've had a number of companies out here, Radical, Black Box, others become EA, spin-outs from that. There's been so many different companies that have come through those experiences. There's an establishment of the video game culture here. And frankly, the BC credits and the Canadian shred credits are not harmful as well.
So, well, let's start with the talent side of it. That's obviously more in your kind of field.
Yeah, talent is huge in Vancouver and throughout the whole of Canada. It's mostly production and creative, whether or not it's VFX or whether or not it's games, mobile, console. Games really took its hold when EA, had their runaway hits very, very early on with Need for Speed, and then obviously Ubisoft out east, and then since various evolutions of layoffs and the cycles of the games industry, when people are laid off, that's when new companies are started and new companies are formed, and it feels awful at the time, but it's actually very healthy. Lots of new companies are spawned from that, and people are very, very passionate about the games that they create. The development community is very, very connected and strong. There's I call it the goldfish bowl of talent, where companies or individuals will move from company to company. Everybody knows each other, and there's a lot of loyalty and commitment. We were just talking the other day about just how committed talent are to the projects. When they're committed to finishing, they'll finish it. It's not like other parts of, let's say, America or maybe even Europe, whereby they will think, okay, let me just go on to the next project. They will close, they will finish, and it's a very different vibe here in Canada and Vancouver.
I kind of like that idea of like death of big projects leads to birth of indie companies. Is that kind of actually how you do a lot of work with the, indie parties? I think is where I first met you, and many years ago at GDC. And you think about kind of indie parts of this space. Are we seeing those being successful, turning into bigger companies, becoming more interesting, or is it just look, we can create cool stuff?
Yeah, so to dovetail on that, there's like 168, I think it's 168 tech companies that qualify for IDMTC and BC. So the biggest clusters are in Vancouver, Vancouver Island, Okanagan, and like interior Prince George and up. So it's a really big cluster, but it's not just games, it's also tech. So, back to that first question about why the talent is so great is because there's some huge anchor tech companies that I think games are a couple of years behind, but we're in a hockey stick growth and we're going to get there. So if you think of world-class organizations that come from a startup, you look at Hootsuite, Slack, Mobilify, and there's a whole bunch more in there that I'm probably forgetting, but those are the anchor tenants that I think we're going to get. The next anchor billion-dollar game studio is going to be here. It's going to be like a mobile studio that's profitable. It'll be, Hothead, thinking something like that, that's going to grow and explode. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. So I think what we're seeing now in that sort of 168 that I mentioned, there's 4 or 5 huge companies that are over probably 150 or so.
Josh, I was actually just writing up a list. On the PC side, you've got Clay, Piranha Games, UFG, United Front, Blackbird, Phoenix Labs, all companies with 50 to 100 to 150 people. On the mobile side, Kabam Vancouver, Hothead, yourself at Eastside, Iugo, A Thinking Ape, Roadhouse. We've invested in one called This Game Studio. Greedy DNA and Gumi may have pulled out, but there is enough out there to support 100, 150, 200 person companies now. The question is, can someone be even larger?
I think when you say, like, that's another big thing of because I talk a lot about the Vancouver game, basically like last night in pubs when I'm drunk, so it doesn't really make sense most of the time, but today I'm just hungover, so it still might not make sense, so bear with me. But what happened in the Vancouver game scene is we had that big sort of exodus of all the bad stuff that happened, Radical, Ubisoft, Rockstar moved out, but then all those veterans joined up, started doing mobile game stuff. Some studios pivoted, like Hothead, and that was kind of the first phase. And now the next phase why I think we're in the terms of the growth like this is because all of these other companies came and they weren't successful in their business here, but what they did do was they planted the seeds of all these people that are very focused on mobile free-to-play, which really helped the ecosystem. So unfortunately, we wish Greed, DNA, and Gumi would have stayed, but they didn't. But they left all the senior talent that's now going to studios, starting their own studios. We have a huge upcoming VR AR cluster. We have a huge upcoming indie scene, and we also have all of the supporting companies that we don't talk about much but are really important in the cluster. So those are ad networks, people doing analytics for VR AR, people doing all that stuff in the startup space. So that's where I think is really exciting, where games can start to work with the startups, and the startup the startup area is huge here. It just came back from another conference, and it was amazing, the speakers they got here.
I will say to the audience at large, one back was Iugo. It is a red ocean in mobile, in free-to-play mobile. If you want to have your brand new studio and go big in Vancouver in free-to-play mobile, I'd probably think a little harder about that. Just like the console world evolved from many console players down to a few, PC down to a few, for NCSoft, we're thinking of reserving $20, $30, $40 million in marketing in UA for the launch of our first game. That is not messing around. tough for an indie to do that. Where are the other areas of growth right now? Where can you go where there's opportunity to be an indie and thrive? Whether it be mobile VR, high-end immersive VR, high-end maybe a little expensive, Sony and others are paying their way and buying content right now, so that there are big checks going on. But mobile VR, still a way for opportunity.
I generally buy into that, and I say similar things quite often myself, but one of the things I think I'll still reserve on with that is that the billion-dollar games, yes, I'm totally with you. Getting in the top 10% is very difficult. But for a lot of indie studios, success doesn't have to look like billions of dollars. To be able to afford to make the next game is still achievable, even though there are like 450 games launched every day on the App Store. Even though 2% of games break even, it's still feasible.
I would turn this around. I'm going to be a little careful because there's a camera here.
Yeah.
Back in, actually I have a note here. Back in 2011, when I first represented EA at one of these conferences, I got instructions from Corpcom saying, say nothing that's quotable, right? So last year I looked at 180 deals. I had a peer at GRE, some of you know Shanti Burgo, looked at 200. We both did one last year, and we didn't actually think that we missed anything. If I think about studios in Vancouver, and I compare this to Helsinki or to Southern California, I can name some companies, if I could get my hands on them for NCSoft, I could see them making a $100 million annual revenue game. Here in Vancouver, currently, I can't name anyone like this except Ayugo, but they had help. They had Walking Dead, and they had Scopely. It would be very interesting to see the community develop one of those that can make, in and of itself, a $100 million annual revenue sort of a game. I think that would be awesome to see.
But I think both of you have kind of pointed out something like a real fundamental truth about it, which is that scope, that growth requires the tech, it requires the infrastructure, it requires the talent, and also there's some kind of chemistry that seems to be missing, which Helsinki seems to have in spades.
So if you're okay with $5, $10, $15, $20 million, you're staffing up 20, 30 people, and you get shred credits and Vancouver digital media credits, you'll have a fine business.
Yeah.
That greater ambition to something larger, that is what we are looking for, so we can invest or buy that.
Sorry, I just want to add to that. I absolutely agree with you. And when I look at culture, the culture of the games business in Finland, for example, or in Silicon Valley, or anywhere else, there's something very unique about the talent in Vancouver. Is that they're looking for a nice business, and they really ultimately need some significant investment to be able to take that trajectory that you're talking about. And that is really hard to find, because you're looking for those individuals that maybe come from the maple syrup style mafia, where you've got that incredible hunger, just like the Slacks of this world, etc., that can just take it to that level.
I'm pretty sure 95% of the Finnish companies are going to BIF, honestly. But because there is Supercell and there's Rovio, they all have the dreams and the ambitions.
I think chemistry is right, though, what you were talking about there. So Hothead comes from a group of people that set up Radical Entertainment, the console days. Those people still work together now, 10, 15, 20 years later. So, and they've had success as well. I think that's the other thing that you missed, is like experience of success also can help breed more success in a way. So previous panels have been talking about failure and how that can help breed success in a way. This city's, you can do that in this city with a startup. You can fail, it's okay. People don't mind that. They just want to see people get out there, do things, and try and get better. That's the sort of ethos of this city.
Which is kind of in some ways, I live in a town just outside Guildford, which is obviously, it has a lot of the games industry from the old school days, the AAA kind of companies. And it's, in the last 20 years, I've had about 12 meetings in that town, because we meet at Develop or GDC, and it's only in the last year that community has actually woken up to the fact that they need to start talking to each other and behaving with an ambition. And I think this is one of the sort of problems we've had in the UK in particular. If you failed once, that's it, you're over. And I think that mindset being different here, being different in Helsinki, and it's, like you say, having taste of success, but also ability to know what failure means is an critical part of it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people discount is if you're bootstrapped and profitable, you can fail a lot more, right? You can be very successful having a top 200, maybe even a top 300 grossing title in the App Store with very limited UA budget, homegrown talent, your own tech. and not paying a publisher, you can do very well yourself. And you can just, there's lots of freedom there because cash in bank means you can fail a lot, brush yourself off and do other stuff or pivot and do that. So we model ourselves more after the startup world here where it's, small amount of seed money and then just go start producing content. And don't worry, once you start making money, publishers will talk to you after that. They really want to talk to you then, and so do investors.
Yeah. Oh, it's a bit like Sam and Lance earlier on talking about currency being your oxygen. So the cash is key to then being listened to. So is there a pathway from the idea to the small company to the make it big company, or is there a bit of a break there? It sounds to me like most countries, there's a break between the small indie getting successful and then turning into the company with the big idea.
I'd have to say today, among the indies, I can't name the one that will go all the way without some help, without perhaps a big brother. And even in the early days with Radical and others, they got acquired by EA, and there was growth right through that channel. We'll see where it happens here. There's not as much venture capital as you'd like to hope there would be here versus in some other parts of the world, but there are shred credits. There are Vancouver digital media credits. There's things like Telefilm, CMF, those sorts of things that are helpful.
And we're starting to eke out a little bit of maturity now as well in this space, like especially mobile. Some teams here have had live ops experience, and Josh was doing live ops before live ops was a thing, I think.
Yeah, now I'm totally over it.
Yeah.
Not cool at all. We're
bad idea.
We're doing
Dead ops.
we're doing dead
About
ops.
how many people, you've seen
dead
Hothead grow from how large to what number of people today?
When I started, it was 35 people, and we're 170 now. So I'm trying to keep up with who's coming through the door. But
So there's a path.
There clearly,
And maybe if Hothead finds a big brother,
Oh yeah.
maybe even more.
well, we certainly want to make $100 million, so that's a
But
good idea.
it's also interesting, I use people like Hipster Whale and guys like that, and these incredible indie successes we see, and to a certain extent Hothead, actually, they're not just flash in the pan new people, they're guys who've had lots of experience over decades making games in other companies, and then when they come together, magic happens.
You just got to work really hard. I mean, there's magic there, and you can be an entrepreneur, you have great ideas, but you just got to work really hard at it. I mean, that's, it's that simple sometimes, just to make sure that the effort goes in. And then you need that vision and everybody else to go with you too. So, setting that out so that your whole team is aware of what you're actually trying to achieve, I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice I could give out, is making sure that everybody knows where they're heading, And we do that. We meet as a team every week. We get together every single day, the management group, we talk, we have a stand-up, we've filtered that out to the rest of our team, so everybody shares the same vision every single day, so that's what really helps us, drive forward. So,
Is that something that happens elsewhere, or do you guys do that, or you just sit in a pub and chat about it?
So I think that's one of the kind of the secret sauce we have in Vancouver is the only other cluster that really does this in the world is Finland, I think, and I travel a lot and go to a lot of meetups and stuff like that, but what Vancouver has is a really good ecosystem for founders to get together through BC Tech. We have a group of CEOs and decision makers that get together and freely share information, how much revenue we make, how much downloads we get, who to work with, who not to work with, all off the record, and just look at my dashboard, that sort of thing. That's really unique. So I think that's changed from how it used to be. It used to be if you worked at one studio and you went out for lunch with somebody from another studio, they thought you were going to quit, but you're like, dude, I just want to get lunch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's really unique. So we have all of our groups talking all the time, and even with some of the other studios that, like out of Thinking Ape, we've had some people want to work at, we do more casual games, we do more puzzle games, and so they wanted to get out of the casual market more into the core market. They moved over, and so we work for people to stay within the Vancouver ecosystem, but sort of more opening and sharing. And I think that's the difference Vancouver has with other places. It's just that sharing, and that if you have a question, let me know, and I can tell you off the record, and hopefully that helps you.
I mean, that sounds even further than, I mean, the Helsinki guys are amazing because they do exactly as you say. You know, these, you know, people like Marcus and Ilka and Jussi and all those guys do talk to each other all the time, and they're mates. They've been doing this stuff for a long time, and events like Assembly, you know, were a critical part of how they grew up together, learning to code and to make interesting stuff. But that idea that you're nurturing everybody as you go through actually seems a little bit unique. Seems even different from Helsinki. I mean, is it something, you know, is this a cultural thing in Vancouver? You want to help people along?
I think it's actually a Canadian thing. I think because Canada is, and I'm sorry about, I can't really talk about culture, national cultures, considering I'm English and what the English have recently done. But what I will say is that the Canadians, I think, because they're always the underdogs compared to most of the American companies, there is this culture because everybody worked together at one stage because they want to create their own community. For example, when we were emailing the other day, you were talking about how can we invest in the universities to ensure that they are going to be the talent that comes through that can be our monetization specialists, or you know whatever area that really Canada is lacking. Canada, as I said earlier, is great at creative and production, but not so good at monetization and user acquisition, etc., because that is south of the border kind of thing. So really nurturing the talent here and ensuring that they are retained and engaged and loyal, I think, is very, very important.
Again, we're coming back to talent, aren't we? And I think, Josh, I think you mentioned this in an email earlier about actually getting enough talent here. And we're sitting in a panel and there's like 3 Brits on a Made in Vancouver panel, only one of whom doesn't live here.
American.
Oh, an American. Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah. So, you know, we only
Thanks,
have. This is like, wow. And how important is that immigration into this place?
My team, my marketing team is 9 people, and there are a few Canadians, but there are people from all over. So, you know, whether it's Hong Kong
and given a certain vote in the last few weeks, you know, few days, you know, I mean, I imagine there'll be a few more coming this way.
Yeah, it's you know, that's one of the challenges of Vancouver is from startup studio standpoint is just getting in talent from across the world. Like it is a challenge, but you know, our various governments are working at it, but it's not as simple as you think it would be. So if you need to move somebody over here, even from a Commonwealth country, it just takes a long time. There's a lot of process you have to do. You'll have to hire a consultant to help you with that, and there's people that can help you, but it's not like you can get somebody to start in a month. It takes a long time. We have a whole bunch pending right now. So if anyone's from the government that's out there, you're doing a fantastic job, and if you're not, then I can say some other things.
No, I will say for all the advantages here, there are some increasing challenges. Cost, in particular. Labor costs are coming up a little bit. It's, you know, equalizing housing, everything. Absolutely. I had a studio that we backed that opened up in Yaletown, and I got to look at their rental. It's not a lot different than San Francisco, actually. Right?
Wow.
So those advantages, some of them are going away, and so they'll need to be equalized out at some level.
Yeah, and it's difficult to get the people from the Bay to come up here too as well, because you know the salaries aren't comparable at all. So you know, and that's in the mobile world anyway. That's where a lot of the expertise is and the talent and everything else. So you know, if anybody does make it up here, we always seem to think that they're more on loan than they are in for the long haul. You know, so but we're trying to nurture it ourselves at the end of the day. So whether it's people from the UK or people from whichever country, Venezuela, many other countries that we have in our team, you know, it's really about trying to get them to learn it, you know, be good at it, and then maybe they'll become one of those big guys later on, you know.
Well, I'm looking at our moderator who comes from we'll call it an infrastructure company. There are a whole lot of those not here. So whether it be the Bay Area, ad network companies, analytics, a few have come up in Canada. I think a Fuse Powered and others like that put into to Upsite. It would be helpful if there were a few more local, as opposed to just based in the Bay and close to Apple and Google and close to Facebook. And
But that's an interesting problem, because what we're describing here is the same things I hear from the Helsinki guys. Because they've got the same problem of getting the access to talent. I mean, they had the massive advantage of the legacy of Nokia, and let's face it, I think that's
a lot of unemployed people from Nokia.
Exactly, and that even before Nokia went down, I mean, there was this amazing kind of support that Nokia teams gave to that industry in general. But now we're reaching the point where it's very tricky to get people to go to Helsinki to live and to get the talent. And do you think you have the same kind of problem, or my gut feeling is it's a little easier?
Show of hands in the room. If you had a choice between Helsinki and Vancouver, how many for Helsinki living? How many for Vancouver?
Yes.
That could be good and bad. It may be that places that are dark half the year, you have nothing to do but drink and make games, could be an advantage. I don't know. So.
But just to add, the salaries are much lower in Helsinki as well. So it's very hard to convince somebody, from experience, trying to convince somebody that Helsinki, even though the company may be a stellar AAA, top 5 games company,
$10.2 billion company maybe.
It's very, very hard, because they have to be prepared for that significant life change and see it as a major career opportunity. But the majority of people won't go for that.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes along with that, of course, and organisations like the Supercells, they somehow manage to retain largely because of people like Ilka, but they retain a kind of identity that definitely seems to bring something more than just the salary, and not just because you're working on world-class games, because their attitudes and their design processes are so kind of powerful and interesting. So how do we deal with this? I mean, are we in the situation where of course it's inevitable that you're going to have these clusters, but what will happen is other clusters will start taking over, or do you think there's something that Vancouver can do to bring the best talent to make the next billion-dollar game? How is that process going to happen?
Well, I think the obvious answer is we can just combine Finland with Canada and make a new country. If a kick-ass hockey team, we'd get some. I just think it's a win-win.
Yeah,
so
great.
If we can do that, then
just merge. Yeah.
We're golden. Yeah.
I think Vancouver needs to do a better, the Vancouver games industry and the VFX industry and any technology, entertainment, digital industry in Vancouver needs to do a better marketing job. That I find is really, really crucial. People don't understand what the opportunities are here. And I had this same problem a career ago, 10 years ago, when I first came to Vancouver. I had a completely separate job, and I was working with a company called Global Market Insight, and there we were trying to build their talent pool. And at that time, they were saying, we can bring people here, but they don't last here for very long. They move on somewhere else. They go to San Francisco. So here it's being able to have the entire community work together to say, okay, where are all the opportunities? What is the community all about? It's come a long way in the past 10 years. I absolutely admit that.
It should be an easy sell job. Just walk outside. It's amazing right now.
Should be.
Go
Quit telling people to come here. We don't want anyone else. We want to keep it exclusive. Once too many people come here, we're going to have to move East Side Games to Edmonton or something and make that the next cool place.
Well, that's why housing prices are going up, because some people know.
I think it's already happening in a way. I mean, maybe the sales job isn't as good as it should be, but we have Kabam here. And Kabam got a $200 million game, and that's a pretty impressive stat to be throwing around as a studio here. So it's actually happening, but I think Josh is right too. We don't want too many people to come here, really, unless they're going to be good at analytics or good at marketing or good at game development, QA, whatever it might be. So we're pretty select about that.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm kind of liking the place so far. 2 days in, I can see why people like it. But we'll round off we want to kind of let these guys take something away. If you're trying to make the next billion-dollar game in Vancouver, what's the one piece of advice you guys would give?
Focus on quality. Focus on the product. Just make it the best that you can possibly make it.
Take advantage of what you have here, but differentiate. I don't need to hear a Clash Royale with DC or Marvel on top of it. I don't need to hear a Game of War or a Mobile Strike with some other flavor of IP. Something a little more original.
Yeah, focus on that vision. Make sure you know exactly what you're trying to build, and stick to that. It's going to move around a little bit along the way. And then the other part is make sure you know how to get a lot of downloads, because you're going to need them.
Apparently that's a thing.
Downloads are big. I'd focus on, don't worry about that big vision. Just, as an entrepreneur, make your first million, make your first 10 million, make your first 25 million. Focus on that. Keep cash in bank, and keep VCs away as long as you can, because you don't need a bunch of old white dudes telling you what to make when they haven't been in games forever. You don't need that. So just focus on being small, hustle, and just copy the startups. They're already doing it, and that's the Slack model, right? When have you ever seen Slack advertised? They don't. They grew all that just through organics and people wanting to do that. So build your own brand and your own IP with that, and don't worry, there'll be people knocking at your door to date you when you're the pretty girl. Just be okay with being who you are for now. That's what my mom always told me.
I think that's perfect way to end. Yeah, I think it works pretty well. So with that note, I'm going to thank the panelists for taking part, and so you now know how to make it big in Vancouver. Thank you. Thanks. Good man.
Good job.
Perfect.